The top 5 My Little Pony episodes start with Slice of Life with a rating of 9.2. The episode starts with Matilda pasting a new item into her memory book. Cranky Doodle Donkey comes into the house and Matilda realizes the date for their wedding is wrong. Cranky confronts Derpy about the wedding invitations and she just hands him some muffins. We get to a scene where Derpy talks with her friend Dr. Hooves, who is a reference to Doctor Who. She tells Dr. Hooves she wishes she could fix the invitations and he takes her to his lab. He mentions his love for science and mathematics and suddenly remembers his suit hasn't been tailored for the wedding. Dr. Hooves asks DJ Pone 3 where Rarity is and finds 3 stallions at a bowling alley. They say they'll tailor his suit if he wins a game of bowling. We get to a bugbear showing up and Twilight and her friends begin to fight it. Derpy tries to make up for her mistake in getting the flowers for the wedding arranged for today, but this fails. And we get to Lyra and Bonbon. Bonbon reveals herself as Agent Sweetie Drops, claiming the bugbear has found her. We get back to Dr. Hooves, who looks like he's in a tough position with his game. He drops the ball when Derpy comes in, and when the bowling ball strikes the bowling pin, it almost knocks out the other one but fails. Derpy then tells him how she thinks she could use his fireworks as flowers. But Dr. Hooves explains to her how the fireworks can go off with an unknown trigger. We then get to Matilda in the spa, anxious and getting a hairstyle for the wedding, and meeting Stephen Magnet, who turns out to know Cranky Doodle Donkey himself. He reassures her about Cranky and the wedding, saying that Cranky went on his way to find her. Stephen Magnet then goes on to say that the wedding is everything, which frightens Matilda. We then get to one of the best scenes of the entire episode, where Octavia is practicing the song she will be playing at the wedding. As DJ Pone 3 enters the house, Octavia argues that the wedding songs are standard, that she wants the wedding to be special. DJ Pone 3 gets on her own DJ booth and starts making some beats as Octavia plays, trying to make something that sounds good with her playing. They then start playing together and we get this bright scene of them doing the epic duet, which lasts a bit of time. While they're playing, Octavia finds out they will be late for the wedding, so they both launch out of the house rushing to the wedding. Both of them on the DJ booth, and they both play their duet as they go. In the way as they are rushing to the wedding with the DJ booth, they end up crashing into lots of ponies, accumulating them as they run into them. The DJ booth crashes forward, and after a slow motion scene with Pinky's pet gator, everyone arrives at the wedding, presumably in time. Bonbon, her agent Sweetie Drops, enters the wedding and gives the good news that she and her friends have defeated the bugbear who was terrorizing Ponyville. We then see Dr. Hooves running to the wedding and he tells Derpy that his suit vanished and that a scarf was the only thing left in his closet. Cranky Doodle Donkey's hair is gone, so he gets a piece of hair from Stephen Magnet's mustache. This is a great callback to the very first episode of the show, when Rarity cut a piece of her own tail to replace Stephen Magnet's cut mustache. As Derpy closes the door before the main 6 are able to enter the wedding starts, and the mayor starts to talk about how she sees a bunch of different kinds of ponies, and how they are the stars of their own story. And this shows how self-aware this episode is about what it's trying to do. The mayor then asks them both if they are willing to take each other as husband and wife. They both agree, and they officially get married. The fireworks ignite, and it's revealed that the fireworks special triggers love, and Dr. Hooves exclaims it. To end the episode, we get to a scene with the main 6 outside of the wedding, looking through the window. Twilight then tells her friends how lucky they are to live in Ponyville, and how she loves them all. Rewatching this episode, I can honestly see why the fandom loves this episode so much. We get a deeper dive into all the side characters of the show, and learn lots of things about them. The episode is also really dynamic, giving lots of callbacks and references, which overall feels very fun and exciting. The episode never fails to keep the viewer's attention as they notice references or get entertainment from all the chaos. Slice of Life really captures what the fans wanted out of a 100 episode as special, and it's awesome how well the writers pulled this idea off. The next episode in our list is A Candlelight Wedding Part 2 with a rating of 9.2. The episode starts with an emitting light, as we find out it's from Twilight Sparkle's horn. There's a dark atmosphere and it makes the viewer curious about where Twilight Sparkle is. She bumps into a reflection of her own face and finds out she was sent by Princess Cadence to the caves underneath Canterlot. Princess Cadence enrages Twilight when she tells her how she has plans with her brother who she will marry, which makes her shoot at the places where she is because it's what she thinks will stop her. As Twilight destroys a wall, she sees Princess Cadence on the other side and tackles her, but turns out this is the real Princess Cadence that was being mimicked by an imposter. They both make a plan to escape the cave and stop the imposter's plans. We then get to a very grand and dramatic song. The song is really good as it shows the villain's motives and makes you really invested in the story as you're curious to see who the villain really is and what's really gonna happen. We then get back with Twilight and Cadence trying to find an exit. They do, but they get cornered by ponies under the dark magic of the imposter. We get to the scene of the wedding, and the real Cadence is shown, and it is revealed that the Cadence Shining Armor who is going to marry is an imposter. The imposter questions how they were able to escape her bridesmaids, and we see how in a flashback as Cadence gets a bouquet and tosses it, which distracts them, giving them a way to escape. The real Cadence explains the villain's identity and how she is a changeling, which takes the form of someone you love and gains power by feeding off their love for them. This is some interesting lore we get from the episode, and it shows how threatening the changelings really are. The imposter's identity is revealed as she transforms into her changeling self, who is known as Queen Chrysalis. Chrysalis threatens to feed on everyone's love, but Cadence relies on Shining Armor's protection spell. Queen Chrysalis doubts and further tells them how she has been feeding off of Shining Armor's love for Cadence, which just really shows how evil she is, and is really menacing. We then see the changelings destroying through the shield, which elevates things to the max. Princess Celestia challenges a fight with Queen Chrysalis, but she wins the fight because of how much love she got from Shining Armor, which made her very powerful. Everyone freaks out, and Princess Celestia tells Twilight and her friends to get the elements of harmony, which they use to defeat Discord. As they are walking out, we can see the changelings break the Canterlot shield and charge at the main six. They get cornered, so this calls for an epic battle. We get to a bunch of cuts of the main six fighting off the changelings, and when they're finished fighting them off, a bunch of other changelings from a distance come and chase after them again, which leads to them getting cornered. We get to a scene with Princess Celestia scarily being cocooned by Chrysalis, and we can see Cadence glued to the floor, and the main six totally powerless against the changelings. Chrysalis commands her minions to feed off other ponies, and we can see Applejack apologize to Twilight for not listening to her about her suspicions. Twilight sneaks up on Cadence and uses a spell to unglue her from the goo, keeping her from walking, and tells her to go to Shining Armor as she still has the chance. And we get to a mildly emotional scene as Cadence weeps over her mind-controlled groom, then a spark of magic from her horn, which makes Shining Armor conscious again. Chrysalis comes back, and when Shining Armor tries to use his magic, it doesn't work, so Cadence tells him her love will give him strength. Chrysalis thinks it's ridiculous, but they do it anyway, and as a big swarm of light comes on, it gets so powerful it flings Chrysalis and her army away from Canterlot. We then get to the wedding, and Princess Celestia pronounces Shining Armor and Cadence as Mare Cult. And when they get to the balcony to wave at everyone, Princess Celestia tells Twilight about the valuable lesson she learned about trusting your own instincts. The episode ends with Princess Cadence and Shining Armor being sent out in a wagon and some fireworks. It's funny that we have 2 wedding episodes in a row here, but I think that this episode does deserve the spot, as I can see how people can relate to Twilight's conflict, including myself, as we can suspect our loved ones getting into some dangerous territory, which is something I think people resonate with a lot, and why I ultimately think this episode was rated so high. Besides that, we got very high stakes, a fantastic villain song, and a new villain. We get to learn about the changelings and their nature, which ends up becoming important later on in the show. The episode overall is a really good one, and I can see people praising this episode a lot in the community. And personally, I like this one a lot too. The next episode in our list is Twilight's Kingdom Part 2 with a rating of 9.3. The episode starts with Canterlot and Princess Luna further explaining why they will get rid of their magic. They explain that their magic can't just disappear into thin air, so they will have to give it to Twilight, so the villain Tyrek won't absorb their magic. Twilight is pretty nervous about this responsibility, but the princesses trust her with their magic to defeat Tyrek. We cut to a scene with Discord, who betrayed the main six, feeling like something is wrong during his team up with Tyrek. This is some really thoughtful writing, as we could start to see Discord's regret for his decision to betray his friends from the last episode, possibly foreshadowing for the future. We can see Twilight transformed and holding their magic. We get to Twilight's house with Spike sleeping, and Twilight having some trouble trying to control her magic. She realizes the sun isn't up, so she uses her magic to raise the sun. which she struggles to do, but ends up doing it. After Tierig got a hold of Shining Armor, Tierig then tells Discord that he can just go and have fun, and tells him he won't stand in his way. We get to Tierig finding the princesses, and it turns out he can't take their magic since they all gave it to Twilight. We get to Twilight and she bursts through the door and tries to find a place where she could practice controlling her magic. Her friends notice her fast, accidental flying, which makes them question what is going on with Twilight. Twilight says they can't go with her to Cannon Lot and encourages them to tell everyone to stay inside their homes. Tierig, after realizing the princesses got rid of their magic, makes a portal to send the princesses to Tartarus, where Tierig was imprisoned before he escaped. Discord asks him if he meant his will as well when he was explaining to the princesses about them bowing to his will. Tierig says of course and gives him a medallion as a sign of his gratitude and loyalty. Discord then starts showing Tierig all his alterations of the stained glass windows, with goofy portrayals being shown instead. Tierig asks him why he hasn't altered one of them, and also asks him why he hasn't told him about a fourth princess. And Discord simply tells him he just needed assurance that Tierig was really in for a team effort. Discord reveals Twilight's location, and Discord returns to the main six and puts them in a cage. Fluttershy asks Discord how he could betray his friends when she believed in him, and he says he thinks Tierig offered a lot more than their friendship. Tierig then proceeds to steal their magic, and we could see Discord's expression of regret. We then get to the big moment where Tierig betrays Discord. It honestly makes sense why Tierig was able to take his magic, even though he's more powerful than him. Discord was too caught up in the moment to realize he could defeat him. Before Tierig leaves, Discord tells him that he's confused because he gave him a medallion, a sign of gratitude and loyalty. And Tierig simply tells him the medallion is as worthless as his brother, who turned on him. We then get to a scene with Twilight practicing her powerful magic, and we could see her bumping into Tierig. When Twilight teleports to her house to escape Tierig's attempt to absorb her magic, Tierig ends up seeing her and destroys her house with a big blast. This is a big risk from a writing perspective, as we could see that an iconic location that has been here since the beginning of the show has now been destroyed. It really gives a sense of importance to the current situation Twilight's in, and it's really amazing how far this show can go to take risks like that. Then a fight starts with Twilight flying towards Tierig with a big beam shot at him. Tierig understands what the princesses have done, and he charges at her. He gets a hold of her and throws her into a mountain. He comes crashing into it with Twilight on him, so she teleports upwards and blasts him downwards. While she shoots him again, going down, we could see a circle being cut out by Tierig so he could lift up the rock and escape. Tierig smashes the floor and makes some walls, which Tierig breaks with her blasts. We then see Tierig and Twilight shoot at each other at once, and it causes a major explosion. It appears they are both at an impasse, so Tierig offers Twilight her friends in exchange for her alicorn magic. As Tierig demands an answer from Twilight, she realizes that releasing her friends is the right thing to do, so she agrees to exchange her magic for her friends, including Discord. Tierig releases her friends, and Tierig obtains Twilight's magic. Tierig grows really big, and Discord starts to explain how Tierig tricked him by making him believe that he could offer anything more valuable than friendship. He then proceeds to give Twilight the medallion Tierig gave him, saying that this time he is telling her the truth about it being a sign of their friendship. This arc of Discord is actually really good, as Discord has always been acting mischievous, and we can finally see him change his point of view on being loyal to his own friends. Everyone rushes to the chest, and we could see that the medallion is the final piece to open the chest, turning into a key. Twilight says they all need to turn the keys together to open it, and they do. A rainbow shoots at the Tree of Harmony, and as it ignites the elements of harmony, we could see the main six being transformed into a more powerful version of themselves. When they go to Tierig, he tries to stop them, but questions why it isn't working, as he thinks they have no magic. And Twilight tells him that he's wrong, and they do have the most powerful magic of all. And Tierig's power gets erased, allowing us to see all his variations. Tierig is then sent back to Tartarus, where he trapped the princesses. We can then see the main six going in various directions to restore everybody from the magic they got taken from Tierig. We can then also see the princesses being set free, able to go back to their castle. The elements return to the chest, and we could then see the chest being shot up to another place, forming a big castle from the ground. Twilight asks who the castle belongs to, and Princess Celestia tells her she believes it is Twilight's. Twilight says that she has the power to spread the magic of friendship across Equestria, and now knows that it is the role she is meant to play as a princess. We then get an upbeat song about their celebration for defeating Tyrek, and we can see many callbacks to previous episodes of the season, which is awesome to see, as these places have a connection to the chest that was used to defeat Tyrek. I can definitely see why people love this episode too, as this episode is one of my personal favorites as well. There's a lot of continuity and risks taken, which are necessary for making any show good. You actually start to feel really curious as we see many important events happening. Tyrek is such a big threat and so menacing, you honestly can't do anything but be curious about how it's all going to end. There are also arcs this episode completes which work really well and make a lot of sense. And it's just fascinating to see how it all comes together the more you think about it. There's a lot of suspense, fear, and surprise that you'll be able to see with this episode. Overall, an episode that well deserved a spot and is a personal favorite. We next have the last problem with a rating of 9.4. The episode starts with bad character galore as we can see paparazzis and different kinds of creatures and everything. We see a grown-up version of Spike explaining how his duties as royal advisor are pretty difficult, and Twilight with a new princess body. Twilight talks about her top student, who seems to be missing the most important lesson of all. We then get to Twilight's best student, who is Lusterdon. Lusterdon questions if the School of Magic is really for her. She proclaims that making friends is a big waste of time and that she doesn't want to make friends. I think this is a good conflict as the show is all about friendship. And it's a strong conflict for a finale for this show. Definitely a great start. Twilight starts to explain to her that friendships take work and have no guarantee of lasting. We can see Twilight making sure that she has everything ready before she moves to Canterlot, thinking Spike should pack his Power Ponies comics too. Spike thinks he's better off without them. We can see Twilight worrying about her current situation as she is moving, having a coronation, but the thing is, we already know that Twilight's situation is going to end up alright. As we know, this is a flashback, so there isn't really any reason why we should be too invested in Twilight's struggle, other than it being relatable. Twilight is worried that her friendships will drift apart, and Spike encourages Twilight to just talk with her friends, which leads to the most monotonous part of the episode. We can see Applejack working with boxes for the coronation, with Twilight asking her if she's worried about how things will change afterwards. And Applejack just doesn't care and thinks change is natural. And we get Pinkie telling her plans with her cakes and Gummy's role with the fireworks. Twilight asks her the same questions and Pinkie doesn't really care either. We get to Fluttershy with how she will use the animals to help with the coronation as well. We get to Rainbow Dash and it seems like she's too busy with the Wonderbolt plan for the coronation to talk with Twilight, which basically shows she doesn't care. We get to Rarity making Twilight's gown for the coronation with her plan of using spiders as a material for Twilight's gown, which is actually pretty neat in my opinion. All of Twilight's friends seem to think that change is a good thing, but Twilight just isn't convinced. Spike changes his mind about the comics and thinks he should take them to Canterlot. Twilight's friends come to visit and talk about their plans for the coronation. Twilight reveals to her friends that she's leaving Ponyville and they all gasp. We get back with Lusterdon and she thinks her friends didn't care about her moving away, which Twilight disagrees with. We get back to the scene and we can see Twilight's friends are actually pretty sad, and Twilight thinks they don't care because of how careless and worried for the coronation they acted when Twilight was trying to talk to them. Twilight is upset that their friendship might be ending and everyone is really scared about it too. They all sob and Twilight thinks their worry makes Twilight less worried. Spike mentions that they are going to miss the train to Canterlot, and we can see Starlight attempting to give a present to Twilight as everyone rushes to the train. The main six have missed the train, but Twilight just uses her horn to teleport everyone to it. We can still see the main six worried about their plans for the coronation, which we have already been seeing for the past 5 minutes. We then see more stuff about the coronation plans, with one of the ponies in charge asking Big Mac if the boxes contain the finest sparkling apple juice, with Big Mac agreeing. We get to a kitchen where we can see Rumble, which is a nice callback to how Rumble learned how to cook in an episode. It seems like Big Mac got the wrong crate, and we get back to the main six. Everyone arrives and we can see Twilight with the princesses. We can then see Princess Celestia giving a speech to all the creatures about how change can be unsettling which I will give credit for as it goes with the theme of the episode. We could then see the cool gown that Rarity made for Twilight with the special material that was made with the spiders, which is awesome. Finally, as Twilight is walking towards the balcony to greet everyone, she slips over, she gets back up and says sorry. Another cool thing happens where we can see the two princesses combining their crowns to make a new one. We get to a disaster as the spiders stayed on Twilight's gown and it distracts the birds. We get to Fluttershy and we can see that she does not have anything sufficient to feed the swans. The swans begin to give Twilight her crown, but as it's about to, the Wonderbolts come in and lots of fireworks, which causes the swans to drop the crown. So Twilight leaps forward, falling, but goes back up as she can fly. Applejack says to Twilight, but turns out she hasn't gotten her apple drink yet. It turned out really poorly, and we can see an embarrassed Big Macintosh. We can then see Lusterdon thinking that her coronation was a disaster, and her friends didn't recover, and they all drifted apart. We can then see Twilight's friends passing through the door, just talking about their regular lives. Lusterdon then says she assumed that since Twilight and her friends aren't together all the time now, they wouldn't be friends anymore. We get back to the scene where Twilight admits the coronation was a disaster, but we can see Pinkie thankful that the coronation is over, and all her friends have a good laugh despite the negative circumstances. We can then see Starlight's gift for Twilight, which turns out to be a bunch of memories that her friends chipped in on, which is sweet. Twilight then establishes a council of friendship, and we can see Princess Celestia calling it a wonderful decree. And they talk about how they trust Twilight to be under the control of all of Equestria. Everyone hugs and we get back to Lusterdon. She gives the question that even though everything changed and they all moved away from their friends, they didn't grow apart. And we now know that they are the Council of Friendship, and the main six explain their duties. Twilight answers and says the theme of the episode, that friendships can be hard and take work to maintain, and without friends things can be a lot harder. Lusterdon says she never thought of friendship as something to work on, and she states that she is way too focused on her studies, which is a great allusion to how Twilight was focused on her studies for friendship at first. Twilight tells her she knows where to send her, and we get a pretty awesome song. We can see all the creatures of Equestria and all the work that the main six really did in Equestria. It's pretty nice to see, and before the episode ends we can see the main six and Spike at a sunset with themselves in a book closing. A great way to show how the series has ended. After in the first episode we can see the book open. The last problem was an amazing finale, but I'd be lying if I said it was perfect, as people say, and that it deserved this spot. There are a lot of slow and boring parts, and this episode's writing just feels like it's trying to go from point A to point B. This story with Twilight is a pretty easy one to write, and since the writing is on easy mode, you really can't fail to write this kind of finale. What saved this episode from not being amazing is all the cool things we can see happen throughout the episode, such as Equestria and the future, as well as the new bodies that Spike and Twilight have, and these are only some of them. I'd wish this finale could just do something to keep my attention during the parts with all the dialogue, and I'm starting to think people are too focused on the fan service this episode provides to think about the subtle flaws you can see with this episode. I'll probably make a full-on review on this episode to really deep dive into its mishaps and positives. Overall, it still lands as one of my favorites, but I think this episode should be a couple of spots down, as I don't think it deserved a second place rating. Alright guys, we are ready to get into the most highly rated episode of My Little Pony, so stay tuned as we get into it. The best episode of My Little Pony Friendship as Magic is The Perfect Pair with a rating of 9.5. The episode starts with Apple Bloom going to a pear food stand. The salesman, Grandpear, decides to give her some food. Apple Bloom tastes the food and likes it. Grandpear decides to give it to her for free, even offering a jar of pear. We get back home, and when Apple Bloom shows Applejack the pair of jam Grandpear gave her, she freaks out, and Applejack and Big Mac hide the jam before Granny Smith can see it. We then hear Applejack talk about a feud between the apples and the pears. Applejack then tells Apple Bloom she's not sure why when she asks her. We now know of a different type of family called the Pears, who the apples had problems with. Granny Smith enters and asks them what they're talking about, and they try to distract her. The Apple family goes to Goldie Delicious to see if they can get some answers about their feud with the Pears. Apple Bloom explains how Grandpear could be misunderstood, as he was really nice to her. Goldie Delicious picks up a book of their family history, which explains that there was another farm in Ponyville that belonged to the Pears. We can see Granny Smith and Grandpear in different stands, selling their own kind of fruit, and we can see them arguing. We get some funny ways Grandpear expresses his competitiveness as he covers his trees with a blanket to get him off to sleep. which is something Granny didn't do with her trees, which they do treat as real persons. We then learn about two ponies from the apples and the pears who did get along, which were Bright Mac and Pear Butter. Bright Mac tells her to put a sunflower under her chin and calls her Buttercup. Pear Butter likes that name, and we get back to Applejack, who finds out that Pear Butter is the real name of her mom, which surprises everyone as they find out their own mother is a pear. Already we are really curious about Applejack's parents. We learn about another group, and we are curious to see how these two ponies were different and not against each other like how every apple and pear were. Going back, Applejack asks if there's anything else she can tell her about her parents. She tells Applejack that she and her siblings could talk to Burn Oak, who knew their dad personally. We get to Burn Oak, and he knows they are asking about their dad, so we get to a time when Applejack's father, Bright Mac, was racing Burn Oak. He was a lot faster than Burn Oak, but due to Bright Mac being distracted by Pear Butter, he crashed into a water silo. Pear Butter gets in trouble with her father, Grandpear. Bright Mac decides to be bold and stands up for her, as it was his fault. We get to learn more about Bright Mac's character. We learn that he is very honest, which is a really good quality for Applejack's parent. Burn Oak further explains Bright Mac's honesty, which makes sense because, as we know, the apples are supposed to be honest. Apple Bloom asks if he knows anything about their mom, and Burn Oak just recommends they go to visit Miss Cake for information about their mom, since she is the one who knew Applejack's mom. We can now see a similar story structure to the last problem, as the story is relying on flashbacks. This time I think it works really well here, as this time it's a lot more interesting as we learn about Applejack's parents and their relationship with various ponies, and it makes us think about what really happened to them. Before we get to Miss Cake, we can see Big Mac asking Burn Oak if later on he can hear more stories, which Burn Oak agrees he would like very much. We then get to Miss Cake, who is making a cake. She then begins to explain how Applejack's mom was the one who gave her the idea to pursue making cakes. We get to a flashback which further explains how Pear Butter helped Mrs. Cake bake cakes. When Mrs. Cake wanted to surprise Pear Butter with a cake, it turned out Pear Butter was busy hanging out with Bright Mac. As they are about to kiss, it is comedically interrupted by Miss Cake breaking a stick, which alerts them. Mrs. Cake proceeds to give the cake to Pear Butter, and we can see Granny Smith coming in and scolding Bright Mac for hanging out with Pear Butter. We get to a scene with Pear Butter and Bright Mac on a hill. It turns out that Pear Butter has a surprise for Bright Mac, which he thinks is a guitar at first, but it's actually a song she made for him. This song is really good as it really captures the relationship of Applejack's parents and how much they love each other and the struggle they have to stay together. This song could also possibly be part of the reason why this episode is rated so highly. The lyrics are also cleverly written, really bringing the theme of falling in love. After Pear Butter admits she fell in love with Bright Mac shows her a carving he made on the rock, which shows their love for each other. As everything is going well, we later get to Grandpear telling Pear Butter that they are moving. This is shocking news to Applejack and her siblings, and they are desperately curious to know what happened with their parents. Mrs. Cake tells them to get to the mayor for more parts of the story. The mayor tells them she played a big part in their wedding, as she officiated the wedding of Applejack's parents. We can see Bright Mac and Pear Butter planting a seed as a special way to seal their vows. Before they can get married, we can see Granny Smith, then Grandpear, catching them about to marry. Bright Mac tells them both that he and Pear Butter are in love, and they are both shocked. Bright Mac and Pear Butter then get married, and both of their parents are upset by this news, and Grandpear forces Pear Butter to make a decision between Bright Mac and still having him as a father, and we can see Pear Butter's decision to be an apple over a pear. This is pretty emotional drama as we can start to see the hard decision Pear Butter had to make to stay with Bright Mac, as she literally had to lose her father in order to be with him. Before we get out of the scene, we can see Granny Smith showing sympathy for Pear Butter as she cries over her lost father. Applejack and her siblings decide to go to Grandpear to talk to him about what they just learned about Granny Smith and Grandpear, and we get to learn about the real reason he moved to Ponyville, which was for how sorry he is for not wanting to know them and for his decision to abandon his own daughter. We get to Granny Smith, and Applejack reveals to her that she and her siblings were off learning about their parents. Grandpa and Granny Smith then apologize to each other, and Granny Smith welcomes him back. Apple Bloom tells him that she and her siblings have something to show them both, we get to the place where Bride Mac and Pear Butter made their vows, which made a beautiful tree that had fruits mixed with pears and apples, and it resembled a heart, indicating the truce the apples and the pears made. This episode was absolutely amazing, and I can really see why this is the highest rated episode. We get a similar theme as other episodes like Over a Barrel, where we shouldn't distance ourselves from other groups just because we don't want to talk things out. It's a theme shown beautifully, and this episode is also similar to The Last Problem, but this episode proves its structure can be used to create an engaging and heartfelt story. We get an answer to a question that many people were left wondering, and its loose ends get tied up in this episode as well. I think this episode definitely deserves a spot, and this is an episode I'd rewatch many times. Well, that's it for the episodes. Leave a comment on what you think and what you'd like to see next.